Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the third installment of our Wisconsin Farmers Union Fall Lunch and Learn series. My name is Kirsten Slaughter, and I'm the Membership Engagement Director for Wisconsin Farmers Union. I am so pleased to have you on the call today as we talk about community benefit agreements with Erik. Wisconsin Farmers Union is a membership-run organization whose members set the policy and educational initiatives that we then advocate for. Renewable energy and local control are two topics that Farmers Union members have continued to discuss and include in our policy book. If you are not already a Wisconsin Farmers Union member but are interested in joining the conversation, we invite you to join today. I'll include a couple of links in the chat, both now and at the end of the call. And at the end of the call today, Wisconsin Farmers Union Director of Conservation and Stewardship, Tara Greiman, will be talking about additional opportunities for Wisconsin Farmers Union members to get involved. Before I turn it over to Erik, I wanted to go over a couple of quick Zoom housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded, and we will ask that everyone stay muted during the presentation. But if you have questions, please put them in the chat during the presentation, and then we'll have time at the end to answer those questions. We would also like to invite you to be on the lookout for the rest of our October Lunch and Learns happening at noon over the next 3 Wednesdays in October. Topics we will cover include building blocks for cooperative endeavors, parliamentary procedure, and how to have civil discourse. And now I'm going to turn it over to Erik Hatlestad, who is a lifelong resident of rural Western Minnesota and the county president in Minnesota Farmers Union, and who for the last 11 years has been working on the clean energy transition and rural electric cooperatives at an organization called CURE. During that time, his work has led to historic investments in rural electrification through the new ERA and PACE programs passed in the Inflation Reduction Act. In 2024, Erik served as an advisor to the Rural Utility Service, helping develop the USDA's first community benefit plan framework. Thank you, Erik, and I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here with you all today. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that all right? All right, excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today here. I wanted to give you all a quick introduction into community benefit plans today. Of course, community benefit plans are a huge topic of conversation as we enter into the clean energy transition. And I think particularly as we have seen some historic investments in rural electrification through the New Era and PACE programs, we have a particular opportunity for Wisconsin Farmers Union members to get involved, not just in the many clean energy projects I know that are being developed across Wisconsin, but also with Dairyland and their member cooperatives, who I know many of you are member owners of. So we'll get into a kind of broad overview of what community benefit plans are, some kind of specific opportunities for you all to be thinking about, and then some examples of successful community benefit plans and community benefit agreements from across the country to kind of get your gears turning. And then we'll have some time for questions at the end. All right, so just a quick rundown of who CURE is and our work. So we are a rural grassroots organization that has been around for over 30 years. We are focused, we've been focused on a lot of different things over the last 30 years, but about a little over 20 years ago, we started getting involved in the conversation around clean energy and climate change, and have been working on supporting rural electric cooperatives and rural utilities to make the clean energy transition in a way that centers farmers and centers rural communities as they do so since then. Me personally, I've been with the organization since 2013, and we've done a lot of stuff around the clean energy transition, as was mentioned, and around rural electric cooperatives. So we think we have a pretty firm understanding of community benefits and where we can go with rural electric cooperatives on them. We helped create the historic policies, the New Air and PACE programs, which I know many of you have heard about, thanks to the multiple visits from the administration to Wisconsin in recent months. I've also been visiting Wisconsin quite often in recent months to see these really exciting announcements, and have had the opportunity through these conversations or through this work to, I think, really set organizations like here and Wisconsin Farmers Union up to have a lot of important influence in making sure that these investments center rural communities. We've also done a lot of work around community benefits over the last 20 years. Of course, working with or spent the last 6 months with the USDA, helping them consider how they would be creating their first community benefits plan framework for the New Air and PACE programs, how they would be reviewing those and approving or disapproving them. We've done a bunch of work in Minnesota's state policy to help ensure that impacted communities have their concerns taken into account through and particularly polluting projects, and that's through the Minnesota Cumulative Impacts Coalition. We have contributed to many community benefit plans for successful federal grants and have worked on some specific on-the-ground community benefit stuff in we helped a number of farmers receive compensation when a transmission line went across their farm, and are currently working on some county-wide community benefits in western Minnesota around wind siting. All right, so enough about me and enough about Cure. What are community benefit plans? So community benefit plans are non-binding agreements between a community and developer. Essentially, these are kind of broad documents that outline how a community or how a developer will engage the community. It identifies community's priorities, concerns, and outlines the developer's potential commitment to meet those priorities. Community benefit plans have been used for decades by developers to build community support for a project. Historically, they've been used in a lot of urban planning and urban development settings. Some of the kind of classic examples of them have been around stadium construction in different large cities. But in recent years, more and more clean energy developers and federal agencies have been adopting community benefit plans as a way to make sure that community concerns are heard, to make sure that benefits are delivered in addition to the project construction, and to make sure that those projects are a success. The Department of Energy calls community benefit plans a quote unquote de-risking strategy for federally funded projects, because obviously if a federal agency is funding a project, they don't want or they want it to be a success, and part of the way they can help make it be a success is by building community support. Community benefit plans can often result in a legally binding agreement, such as a community benefit agreement. We'll get a little bit more into the differences between a community benefit plan and a community benefit agreement in a moment. So why are community benefit plans important? So, of course, I think the reason why I'm here and the reason why many of you are here is to make sure that communities have their concerns about a potential project be heard, but also to make sure that the communities have or receive a maximum benefit from a project that's being developed. Additionally, I think that is kind of the core of how developers and concerned community members can come together is making some form of agreement or having some form of productive conversation that really can help a community capture value and capture benefit far beyond what they would otherwise if a developer was just to come in and without a community benefit plan or a community benefit agreement, but also making sure that we have pathways for people to have their voices heard. Beyond kind of the important fact or the importance factor for community groups and community members, it's additionally important for developers to keep community benefits plans in mind. 30 years of clean energy siting research has essentially pointed to two factors in project success. One of those is a fair community engagement process. So if a community feels better about a community engagement process, if they were talked to early, if community groups they trust, like Farmers Union, were engaged with early, if they were part of planning the community engagement process, really, if, a community is properly engaged and a developer is not hiding anything, you're going to have a better rate of success with the project. Secondly, the other key factor in success is the delivery of highly visible, tangible benefits to a community. So oftentimes a developer will point to potential jobs or potential property tax revenue that will happen as a natural part of building a project. But without specific attention, who knows where the workers who would be building a project will be coming from? Will they be local hires from that community? And if we're just pointing at property tax revenue, not oftentimes residents don't often feel the benefit of that revenue increase. That doesn't necessarily mean that their property tax burden is going to decrease. So having kind of the benefits that are informed and really decided on by the community helps a project be more successful. But not only are community benefits plans good, and community benefits good development practice, they are incredibly popular policy-wise. Essentially 80% of Americans support using community benefit agreements, community benefit plans on development projects. Additionally, beyond community benefit plans, we have a emerging concept called a farmer benefit plan, which Keir is proud to say we first suggested last year. Essentially, this is a what we hope will be a growing framework that will be adopted by federal agencies and developers that will ask them to pay specific attention on how they're engaging farmers and what benefits they are delivering farmers. So Secretary Vilsack did adopt the Farmer Benefit Plan framework as a part of the PACE and New Era framework. So, which we'll get into a little bit more in a moment here. But so as co-ops like Dairyland, who have received these historic investments from these programs, are considering how to make their project a success, they're being asked to specifically consider how they will be engaging farmers, which we think is pretty exciting. But we hope that this will not just be limited to projects that are receiving federal funding. This could potentially be a framework for, any, say, group of farmers like Farmers Union to request in any siting process that you may encounter. Okay, so let's get into community benefit agreements a little bit more. So very simple. So we have community benefit plans. They are our outline of how a developer will be engaging a community, an outline for how they will be responding to concerns, an outline for how they will be how they'll be delivering benefits. But a community benefit agreement is the next step to that. So a community benefit agreement will be a legally enforceable signed agreement between a single community group, a group of community groups, and a developer, identifying a range of benefits that each of them agree to. Now, it can be the result of a community benefit plan. I would say generally that would probably be best practice, is if for a developer to be very intentional about going through and creating a community benefit plan, and at the end of that going through kind of a negotiating process with community organizations that they had already engaged along the way. But that is in effect the difference between the two. One, community benefit plan, the outline, kind of the broad strokes of where a developer will go, and agreement, legally enforceable, specific actions that a developer would take. There are also other type of agreements. There are agreements that are specifically focused on how workers will be hired. Are you using approved apprenticeship programs from, say, the carpenters union or the electricians union? Are you making a specific focus on hiring people from the community where the project will be located? There are good neighbor agreements where you are specifically talking about how payments to a community will be distributed. So say, rather than just paying one landowner for siting a turbine, a solar array, something else, you would be a developer could pay surrounding neighbors, surrounding landowners, in addition to the single host landowner, to essentially distribute local benefits among neighbors. And there, of course, are a variety of other different agreements, and as we'll get into in a moment, there is a whole host of different different components of what each of these different agreements could be. There are again a lot of different components to community benefit agreement. A lot of people, both developers and community groups who I talk to, ask me, what should we make as a part of, or what should we put in our community benefit plan, community benefit agreement? Well, I mean, really anything that you're both willing to agree to. It depends on it. I would say that all of you know your communities better than anyone, and I would expect that each of your communities has a laundry list a mile long of different community priorities that could use additional investment in. Or if you're thinking about, impacts on farmland or preserving farmland, thinking about how a developer could, invest additional money in setting farmland aside or supporting emerging farmers or other kinds of priorities that, Wisconsin Farmers Union or your county organization may have. I get really excited, in Minnesota, and I know Wisconsin has talked about it a long time too. We talk about, the big gaps in local and small meat processing, in a world where we have, new wind and solar investments, and they're looking to, solve community problems in coordination with farm groups. Um, I would love to see a wind developer help support the creation of a local meat processor. Um, Many other things have been successfully accomplished by other community benefit agreements. We all know about the crisis facing rural healthcare systems, rural childcare facilities, rural housing. I mean, I don't need to tell you the problems facing your communities. I would expect they're fairly similar to the ones facing mine. But essentially, with community benefit agreements, we do have the opportunity to land significant investments from developers to solve some of these long-standing problems, or at least contribute to solving them as well, which I think is additionally exciting. Of course, there's a variety of other things that can be included as well, such as, and I think in particular, because I know we deal with a lot of pretty aggressive land agents from developers, is making sure there is a very clearly laid out decommissioning plan, and how is the developer going to be restoring the land once the project reaches the end of its lifespan to productive farmland? Having those conversations, at the beginning of the project, and laying out how steps will be taken, 30 years down the road when the project reaches the end of its lifespan, additionally important as well. So I think that's, I get really excited about the opportunities about winning new investments and building local vitality, but also extremely important parts of the conversation in a community benefit agreement as well, is making sure that your local concerns about how a project may be impacting your community are addressed as well. So I wanted to just touch briefly on how community benefit plans and community benefit agreements are dealt with at a couple of different federal agencies. And this is introducing a slight degree of complexity into the definitions that I have offered so far on community benefit plans and community benefit agreements. So as I mentioned before, a number of federal agencies have adopted community benefit plans as a part of their grant and loan making framework through a variety of the different programs that have been funded over the course of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and others. And each different agency will deal with them in a slightly different way. So unfortunately, there is no whole of government approach on how community benefit plans are addressed, which is a little unfortunate. But how the Department of Energy deals with it is they request a community benefit plan to be submitted with the application to a grant or loan program. So that means that in advance of the application submission, a engagement process should have happened. A developer should have put together a number of community partners, how they will be delivering benefits, how they'll be addressing concerns. And the Department of Energy will then score that community benefit plan as a part of the award making process. And the community benefit plan is worth 25% of the total score of the Department of Energy award making process. So it's a pretty significant part of the process. So if you're hearing any of your if you're hearing any of the local or any projects receiving Department of Energy funding in Wisconsin, you should know that this is what they've gone through. They have 4 different priorities that I've listed here that they want each community benefit plan to address. If you're not familiar with Justice 40, that essentially is just a executive order. It's a commitment from the administration to have investments throughout the different climate investments go to identified disadvantaged communities. Those include low-income communities. Those include communities where a fossil fuel plant is retired, a variety of other different frameworks. So it's an attempt to make sure that underinvested in communities are receiving at least or about 40% of the total investment from these programs. They want to see how communities or how potential awardees are doing engagement with community and labor. They want to see how quality jobs are being created, how the American workforce is being invested in, and of course they want to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as a part of these community benefit plans in the Department of Energy. Now here, as I said before, is a certain part of the complexity here. If a community benefit plan is approved as a part of one of these awards, that becomes a legally enforceable part of the grant or loan from the Department of Energy. So we wouldn't call that a community benefit agreement. A community benefit agreement would be between a developer and a community or group of community organizations. But in the federal award-making context, a community benefit plan is a legally enforceable plan that is between an awardee and a federal agency. So sorry to introduce that second level of complexity here, but there's no easier way to describe it. All right. Secondly, the community benefits plan that the USDA has taken on, which I was pretty involved with this year, differs a bit from the Department of Energy's approach. So the community benefit plan is only used in 2 programs at the USDA currently: the Empowering Rural America New Era program or the Powering Affordable Clean Energy PACE programs. The PACE program looks pretty similar to the Department of Energy's community benefits process. Those applications are due at the time of submission. However, the New Era program is quite a bit different, and I think something that I'm pretty excited about, especially when it comes to requiring community engagement and really making sure that an awardee is actively involving its community and actively being responsive to its community. So following the award from RUS, the Rural Utility Service, an awardee has up to a year to submit the first iteration of their community benefit plan, and then they are essentially required to update that community benefit plan every single year for the next 10 years, roughly. Meaning that they need to be constantly responsive to community input, community desires, and they cannot actually receive money for this program until they have satisfied the USDA that they have implemented their community benefit plan, which I think it's a bit different than how the DOE does it, and I think to me it is I think a bit more. I'm enthusiastic about how it will help communities have their voices heard around their concerns and priorities. Similar to the DOE, there are 4 priorities that each community benefit plan should address. There's only a minimum that each community benefit plan address 1. I think it's pretty likely that most of the electric co-ops who will be receiving awards from this will be having or addressing multiple priorities in their plans. So those are investing in the American workforce, farmer benefits, which of course I'm excited about, and I hope you all are excited about as well. Diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and Justice 40, and then the launch or expansion of a consumer-based energy efficiency program, which essentially means that they would like cooperatives to launch systems to help finance or roll out electrification, energy efficiency technology to their member owners' homes, farms, and businesses. So improving rural housing quality and reducing the amount of energy we're using to heat buildings. So just because we're talking about the New Era program here, I want to make sure that I highlight the opportunity here for Wisconsin Farmers Union. So I saw many Wisconsin Farmers Union friends at Westby back in September, and again in Chippewa Falls a couple weeks ago, where we were seeing pretty historic investments announced in Wisconsin electric cooperatives. Dairyland is one of the recipients of the largest investment in rural electrification since the New Deal, which is really exciting. And Wisconsin Farmers Union has a big opportunity to help Dairyland not only make sure their projects are successful, but also help make sure that their projects are delivering benefits for their cooperative member owners, which, that is the entire history of cooperatives, as I know you all know, all the way back in 1936, when I expect many of your family members were involved with the organizing and setup of the original push for rural electrification. We're really doing a lot of the same thing here, figuring out how our electric cooperatives can continue to serve rural communities, to serve family farms, and to deliver community benefits and improvements to quality of life across rural communities. Beyond kind of the federal program implementation, there are some, I think, barriers to community benefit agreement negotiation that it's important for us to be aware of. I'm really excited about the New Era program and about other federally funded programs, because they do have this community benefit requirement that developers and people who are receiving awards out of these programs do have to go through some community engagement steps and deliver some benefits to communities. However, if a project that is coming to your community is not receiving federal funding in that way, community benefit plans and agreements are a voluntary thing for them to enter into. So we as rural communities lack a certain amount of leverage to bring developers to the table to negotiate these things. So of course, a growing number of developers who are putting together wind and solar and transmission projects, and I would say other projects as well, not just specifically related to energy, are coming around to the idea that community benefits plans and properly engaging a community is a really important step for them to take to make sure their projects are a success. So I think you may have better success with some of them than you would have had in previous years in getting them to voluntarily come to the table. But I think it is still something for us as rural organizations and people who want to see benefits delivered to rural communities, and as people who want to have our communities have a say in what the future of our communities look like. I think it's important for us to continue thinking about how we can put ourselves in a better position to make sure that we're bringing developers to the table. Additionally, this is an emerging conversation, so many local governments, community groups, and other stakeholders may not be familiar with community benefit plan as a concept. So I think there's a lot of different things for us, across rural America to think about, and how we can, figure out how to put ourselves in a better position. Variety of different ways to do that, but I won't offer strong opinions on the best way right now. All right. I wanted to go over quick. How am I doing on time? Do I have a couple more minutes here?
Yes. Yep, you do.
All right. Excellent. I wanted to go over a couple of community benefit agreement examples to just kind of get you all excited about what has been done in communities across the country without federally funded projects. So these are places where a community has brought a developer to the table to negotiate, and they've come to some form of agreement around project siting. And I think there'll be a variety of different ways on how the actual engagement process went, but this is going to be really focused on the outcomes in the agreement. And following this presentation, I'll post in the chat a library of different community benefit agreements. An additional thing to be aware of is that a lot of community benefit agreements aren't publicly available because there's NDAs that are out there, and some developers don't want to let everyone know how much money they're giving away in a community benefits process, which again I think it's a major problem that I think all of us deal with when it comes to land agents and developers. There a lot of the developers have not always done a great job at being very transparent with communities when it comes to negotiating leases for siting, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And I think this is another example of kind of the lack of transparency in how communities can negotiate, around these things. Okay. So this I think is a, City of Salem, Massachusetts, and a wind farm. This is a agreement that is really focused on education and on workforce development. So they were able to bring $9 million in funding assistance to the city, in addition to the property tax revenue that was built. So as you can see, it's annual investments in education, in scholarships, in school programs, really, and affordable housing, really exciting stuff that, as someone who lives in a county with a, housing shortfall of several thousand units, certainly makes me pretty excited. Um, but just an example of, how this community looked at, what were some urgent needs in their community, longstanding community problems, and was able to leverage this investment into helping solve some of those. The Riverhead, New York, and their solar company created a community benefit plan that they had, smaller than the first one. The project is, of course, smaller, but $1.5 million to be paid out in 2 installments. And essentially each year the community decided how they were going to be dividing out this amount of money. So they had essentially laid out this budget, or top line budget, and were dividing money out in around those priority areas. So you could see, priority on protection of agriculture and open space, regular investments in community health, in emergency services. I was on a small town city council, and our fire truck, our ladder truck, caught on fire on Main Street, which was very funny. But then we had to come up with $500,000 to replace a fire truck all of a sudden. I don't need to tell many of you, how difficult it is for a local government to come up with that kind of money to replace core community infrastructure during an emergency like that. This is how this community dealt with this solar array coming to town. This one, I think, is really a really good example of what could be done for farm communities, but it's a little different. So this is a offshore wind project, but their main organization that they worked with was the local small commercial fishermen's organization. I know many of us in family farm world feel some sense of solidarity and commonality with small commercial fishermen. So I think it's a really good comparison. So, in this case, there was a lot of concern around impacts on fisheries. And so they found ways to be in regular conversation about those concerns. The developer was required, as in the terms of this agreement, to hire someone who was essentially the organization, or the fishermen's organization staff, to regularly, be in contact about these problems and how to address them. And then again, additional payments to the local town, totaling in excess of $22 million. Other examples of how counties and communities have taken community benefits in a really, I think, exciting direction. So one of my favorite examples in the Upper Midwest is in Patriot County, Michigan, which maybe some of you are familiar with. But this is a community that has, at the county level, taken on a kind of municipal approach to how they're going to deal with community benefit plans, because they've already been the host to a lot of wind development. So essentially what they've done is created, this whole list of things that they want to see any new project development do when they come to town, really focused on local food systems creation and retaining the agricultural character of the county. So great, I think a really great example as a kind of municipal or small town government or small county government approach to how community benefits could be addressed. skip this quickly, but essentially this is just or I'll go over this quickly just because I know we're running a little short on time here. But this is just an example, of how a developer utility can deal with a community that is going through a coal plant or fossil fuel plant retirement. So this is a recently approved transition plan that really focuses on retraining, relocating workers at a couple of the coal plants in Colorado. Similarly, just another example around manufacturing project, just as another example. But that is all I have for you here. I hope I've been able to share a little bit of information with you, help improve your knowledge of community benefit plans, help you start thinking about some opportunities around community benefit agreements. And of course, as I said at the beginning, this is a huge and emerging conversation. So I'm very eager to continue this conversation with you all right now with some questions and on an ongoing basis in the future as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Eric. I have been kind of monitoring the chat, so I can hop in with a couple of those right off the bat, and then folks can jump in with any extra questions that you have. So the first question was, we do have the recording, but are you willing to share your slides as a PDF afterwards, Eric?
Yes, I can absolutely do that.
Wonderful. John, you have your hand up, so I'll let you jump in since one of the questions was yours.
Oh, I was going to wait for you to finish, but thanks. My question is, where do you mentioned decommissioning in your talk, but where do things like decommissioning our road repairs during construction, discussion of setbacks, what about property owners that have 2 or 3 borders that are affected by a project, where do all that stuff get hammered out? I take it's not in these community benefit agreements.
Well, it can be. I think it depends on. I mean, like with everything, it depends, right? I think if some of those concerns are just impacting kind of one landowner, I think that I think that would probably be something to deal with in the specific landowner's negotiation. Granted, if some of those problems, like we're talking road repair, I think that is something that is absolutely appropriate to bring up in a community benefits conversation, because that is affecting local government, taxpayers in that municipality. But I think, like with everything, it depends. I mean, it may even be more strategic for you, your neighbors, your community, your farmers union, county organization to deal with it in a slightly different way. I mean, I think the kind of snarky answer is the only bad way to do it is the way that doesn't work. I think there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but that's how it would probably be most common to be dealt with.
Go ahead, Pamela.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I joined a little bit late, so please forgive me in that my question may be a little bit off topic here, but a couple of things are rambling through my brain. One is that I wonder how we might be able to better provide good information to the county leaders. I happen to be a supervisor newly elected this last spring, and at the Wisconsin Counties Association, there was only one presentation that I'm aware of in the entire 2.5 days that spoke a little bit to renewable energy, and I believe it was something on solar, but my understanding is it was quite basic. I had another conflict with another presentation that I went to. But so that's one question. And then secondly of all, I didn't hear much about the community benefit agreement and in regard to the health aspects that can happen when we do something, whether it's wind or solar or what have you. I belong to Healthy Climate Wisconsin as a health professional and a public population health nurse. And I think that can help to continue to add on to the conversation, especially when we're in places where folks haven't really necessarily thought about it, the health benefits from incorporating renewable energy, such as what's been described with the community benefit agreement. And then my third comment has to do with here in Wisconsin, we haven't passed any legislation yet for third-party solar agreements. So I'm not sure how that interacts then with the community benefit agreement. So
Yeah, I mean, so I know that there are some resources that are currently being developed at the University of Wisconsin that are specifically for county governments to be dealing with community benefits and renewable siting. I don't know exactly where those are in progress, but I believe those should be. I believe those are coming soon. I couldn't tell you exactly when those are coming, but I know that people are working on them. Additionally, I would be glad to talk with your friends in county government world if you'd like a similar presentation to this as well. Your second question on on health benefits, I think I think there are certainly opportunities to roll that into kind of talking about the advantages of renewable siting. I think in terms of community benefits, I mean, I think about community benefits and more in delivering, investments into, healthcare systems, rather than talking about kind of the, reductions in pollution, and, improvement in health outcomes as a result of that. So I think tying the conversation around health outcomes and pollution reduction to new investments in rural healthcare systems that could result from community benefit agreements, I think is a really exciting conversation to have. Because I know that healthcare continues to always be a big conversation in rural communities. That remind me what your third question was. My memory's going on me today.
I think you answered most of them outside of the last question had to do with how does the lack of legislation in Wisconsin for third-party solar solar entities to exist with the community benefits. So like, how does that intersect or doesn't intersect?
Well, if you were to pass that third-party solar policy, you would just be negotiating with whatever third-party entity would be constructing the array. Generally, I think it's kind of a different conversation when it comes to how we're determining grid access, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it would continue to be a different conversation with the specific developers of those projects. I would say there are probably some pretty big opportunities for state policy on community benefits to essentially put communities in a stronger position to ask for them, to negotiate them. I mean, I think we're obviously aware of, the proliferation nationally of, solar and wind moratoriums. As a, clean energy supporter, I generally, I generally understand a lot of concerns around it. And then, I'm also a little disappointed at kind of not being able to figure out a more constructive way forward. But granted, I think some of the concerns about clean energy siting are very real. and thinking about how we, help rural communities capture maximum benefit and have their concerns heard is the real path forward here. Because I mean, I think we all agree that we need to figure out, or this is the best way forward on climate action. But figuring out how we do that in a way that capitalizes on the opportunity for rural communities in a way that supports family farms and everyone else who calls rural America home is really important.
And Pamela, just so you know, Diane Merrifield is working with UW Madison Extension, and she popped her email in the chat for anybody who wants follow up on where UW is at on that. If I could throw in a couple of other questions that ended up in the chat. Erik, who signs these benefit plans or agreements on behalf of the community?
Well, that's the question. It could be you. It could be someone else. I mean, and that's the thing, no, there's no current standard on who is the legitimate entity to sign them, right? I mean, generally we think of, because there's no state or local policy on them, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be the township or the, municipal government or the county government signing them. In many cases it is, and I would say it is probably best practice to have, the municipality or the school district involved in some capacity, because I think inevitably money would be flowing to them in some way. But in a lot of cases it is, it is coalitions of organizations, like Farmers Union, like organized labor, et cetera, et cetera. There's no current, determination on, who has the authority to sign these. And granted, I think that, that can be as controversial as you want it to be. But I think for our purposes, in Farmers Union world, I think we feel pretty determined in our vision for the future around, a robust future for family farmers in rural communities. And I think we, have a pretty common view of how we can get there. So I would love to see Wisconsin Farmers Union sign a whole bunch of them and deliver some big benefits to members and communities.
Our signing hand will get tired. I have just one last question, and then if folks don't mind just staying on a minute or two extra after Erik's answer. I was just seeing the different amounts in the community benefit agreement examples, and you've talked about, you're going to get more extra funding from bigger projects and smaller. Is there kind of a rule of thumb that community groups can consider when they're trying to figure out what's in the ballpark of what they could even realistically ask of the developer that they're working with?
Yeah, and this is naturally controversial. I would say, in conversations with different federal agencies, they generally expect when they were reviewing project proposals, and granted this differs from office to office, program to program, they would generally expect anywhere between 1% of total project cost to 10% of total project cost, which is pretty enormous in some cases. And granted, I think in awards like the size of the Dairyland Award, you're probably not going to get 10%, as much as I would love that to be the case. But it can be pretty significant. But a lot of things, it depends, right? Like I said before, there's a lot of different things that go into it. I mean, how important is that specific project for the developer or utility? Like, is this one place particularly well situated on a transmission line or a substation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think you should shy away. I don't think communities should shy away from, asking for, a large dollar value. But there really is no established ballpark. I mean, I would say, depending on how badly the community or the developer wants it. I mean, think about it, how, we just saw the longshoremen's strike go. They got a 61% wage increase by striking for just a few days. So, a lot of these developers are not short on money. I would say Dairyland is probably shorter on money than plenty of other developers, just by virtue of them being an electric cooperative rather than a Wall Street backed utility. But I wouldn't shy away from asking for the big bucks.
John, I'm pushing us beyond our time, but if you want to shout out one last question, go ahead, John.
Yeah. So the Dairyland example is a really good one, because my understanding that will span multiple projects. And so the community is it's more communities. So I assume, and you said in your presentation that there's a DOE and or USDA agreement that evolves over time. So I assume this would mean, how do you recommend approaching, I guess, Dairyland and say, hey, how are you thinking about community benefit agreements on the projects that are covered under ERA?
I defer to your wonderful staff people on that, because I have had that conversation with them as well.
Well, that actually is a perfect segue. I'm glad I let you shout out, John, because that brings us to the next point. Just way to put a perfect point on it. So the Farmers Union was approached by Dairyland before they put in their USDA grant application for support. And the Farmers Union said, we will be part of those negotiations and we support these projects if you ensure to us that your project development will start with conversations with the rural communities and that integrates Wisconsin Farmers Union. So we have been in negotiation with them. Well, we've been in communication with them, I should say, about the expectation that now that the funds have been not officially awarded, but announced that they will be awarded, that we expect them to be following up with us. And this is the first step of us making our membership aware of the requirements and prepping for that next step. So they are still in collaboration with USDA and finalizing things, as I'm sure the bureaucracy of moving over $500 million is not quick. So we're in the throes of that right now. To prep
Tara,
us. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So has Dairyland approached multiple organizations like Farm Bureau and others?
Wisconsin Farmers Union is the primary farming agency on this. Farm Bureau has not been approached on this. They're also working with the labor unions, LIUNA, I want to say. Erik, do you know if there were other organizations that we know of that were mentioned?
I believe it is currently just labor and farmers union currently. I think some folks at UW have also been in touch with them as well. But I don't want to get too far over my skis and talking on behalf of UW.
So perhaps that was driven by the cooperative connection then, or because we're certainly not the loudest voice when it comes to farming.
We should have that discussion on what the inner machinations are. I'm sure Erik has more knowledge of that than I do. But in just respecting everybody's time, I wanted to throw out there that we are, as I've kind of said, we are at the beginning stages of these conversations. So we have a lot of upcoming opportunities. The long and short of it is, if you are interested in this topic, please get a hold of me. Kirsten, if you could pop my contact information in the chat while I go through a couple of other things. So we are doing some conversations on agrivoltaics with Extension. So if you're interested in being part of how to integrate agronomy and farming into solar farming, please consider us. We'll be having those from November to February across the state. We're also working with UW in the RSTEP program on landowner lease agreement educational opportunities. So if you are interested in that, there is already an existing webinar that they did with Farm Bureau, which is very good and has legal advice on it. But if you're interested in something more community centered, we can help you get an event like that hosted in your neighborhood. We're having also, our groundswell is actually on ethanol this year. So it will be focused on the renewable fuel standard, which many of us know integrates into these solar farm conversations. But more importantly, on December 13th, right before our convention, is groundswell. And that is all skill training on having hard polarized conversations. So if you are planning to step into your community with these discussions, I would strongly recommend considering registering for groundswell. We also have active committees throughout the year. We have an ad hoc committee that's discussing wind and solar energy that has proposed a couple of resolutions. They will likely be having part of those agrivoltaic conversations. And we have a climate committee and a water quality committee. So if any of those specific factors of how renewable energy affects your community are of interest to you, you can get involved through those committees. Again, that's I'm the staff person who's most integrated into those. So feel free to touch base with me if you're interested in that. And then we will be facilitating reform conversations. And like we said, working with Dairyland on the community benefit agreement things. So if you do have a project, kind of like a large utility scale project coming to your area, we can help facilitate those first meetings and also act as a liaison or at least the organizer to help you get connected and figure out who your partners might be and how to integrate in with the developer. So those are kind of the big projects. I, in the Conservation and Stewardship Department, am the main contact, but you can really contact most of our staff and get directed to where you need to be. That's all I've got. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I will be doing a summary project, and as many people have asked, this will be recorded and we'll have Erik's slides available. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And thank you so much for staying on 7 extra minutes, everyone.